Welcome to Financial Planning Explained. I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner, founder and owner of Menninger and Associates Financial Planning. And one of my associates is sitting to my right is the co-host, Kyle Ryan, also a certified financial planner. Thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me.
And most importantly, all the way to my right is Dr. Maggie Baker. Dr. Maggie, this is our second episode because the first one was so fascinating. We only got through a couple things. There's so much to talk about. Dr. Maggie Baker is a financial therapist, PhD psychologist who had her own experience with finance in the tech crash of 2000, which inspired her to become a financial therapist. And there's no
Correct.
easier or simpler way of putting it. But this is terrific because behavioral finance is such a foundation to what we do. We got to understand it exists. There are emotions that either drive or prevent people from making good financial decisions. And so we talked about a lot of topics. We're talking a little bit about demographics, which I do want to talk about. But one thing that I noticed with what happened with your relationship with your husband is something that I've found that it's getting better as we get further along, but very patriarchal society that we have had as Americans for decades. So when you reference, and by the way, it was in my reference as well, in that my father was a very domineering figure in our household. He was the saver, okay? He was smart in business, et cetera. And to your point, you developed that in your childhood. So he was clearly a role model for how I turned out as it pertains to behavioral finance. But the patriarchal piece is something that I've identified as it's remarkable how many there are out there whereby I have a soft spot in my heart for two types of people, the divorcee and the widow, where they've been involved in a relationship and then all of a sudden they're thrust into having to handle their own money and know nothing about it. And it's not only do I want to swoop in and help them, but I want to protect them from the sharks out there. And I think
They're
they're
sharpening their teeth.
Oh yeah, and I will leave it at that. There are plenty of sharks out there, and I am not a fan of them. Okay, it makes me sick to think that they call themselves a financial advisor because we're referred to as financial advisors as well. But you experience it. So tell me what it's like to be on the side of the unknowing, the here you go spouse, then to learn all of a sudden you're thrust into it. You had to be scared.
I was terrified. Yeah, but fear is a great motivator.
It is.
You know, if you think, oh my gosh, you know, if this trend continues, what's it going to be like when I turn 70? And that, the timing of it, you know, the fact that when I walked into his office and saw what he was doing, he was 51 and I was 50. So that gave me a little time. I mean, we didn't lose everything in 2000, but we lost a lot. We lost mostly what we had gained and then some.
Right.
But we still had some, you know, something in the portfolio. But I think the dawning awareness, yes, it frightened me, but it also motivated me. I think the worst situation is when women are avoidant. And I'd never been avoidant. I just sat on the sidelines and let him handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the one that would be much more conscientious about spending. And I'd pipe up. But women who just say, oh, you know, let my husband do it, which, again, I did to a certain extent, but not completely. But there's some women who just give everything. And then when they confront, they don't know who to trust. They don't know the language of money. They're intimidated by.
What do you mean by the language of money?
Well, just, talking about they know about saving and spending, but, setting up a portfolio, integrating a portfolio with tax concerns so that things are managed well.
Yeah.
They don't know that world.
Don't even know it
at all.
exists.
Right. And if somebody is avoidant to start with, there's nothing like feeling overwhelmed to make them more avoidant. And I mean, I would really ask you a question, because one of the things that I noticed was that all of your advisors are men. And I wonder, with a woman like that, how do you develop a relationship that she can trust that you really want to help her? Because I would think if you had a woman advisor, just the fact that she was a woman would help kind of bridge that gap.
Trust me when I tell you, I want a woman advisor on staff. I've tried twice, actually 3 times, all for 3. On 2 of them out of college, and one of them said, I don't want to do this after trying it. I've always wanted one. And we've had 2 in our office.
Yeah, well, while we don't have a female advisor, we do have instances where we have a newly divorced, spouse or a newly widowed spouse. So one of the things that's the most important thing is just listening. They don't want to be told, you never want to be told what to do in general. When you're overwhelmed by a situation that you're just not familiar with, it's just, let me hear you out. Let me hear out your grievances. What are you fearful of? And one of our mottos is that we sell education as our product. I will never sit here and tell someone, especially if they're just not knowledgeable of a subject, what to do. We start from the ground floor fundamental. This is how it works. This is how it pertains to you. But you're right. I mean, I can never, at a personal level, never been through divorce, and I'm not a woman, so so it is
How
difficult.
lacking you
I
are.
know, right? I'm just trying. One day, maybe. But yeah, it's that's the best. The best route we can take, though, is just coming from a listening approach first.
But I mean, to me, that's the key.
Yeah.
If you know how to actively listen, and you must know how to do it, because I would assume that you have women clients that end up trusting you and
Plenty, yeah.
trusting that you're that kind of guy.
I must exude a sense of trust.
You have to, otherwise they wouldn't open up.
That's correct.
So that's great. But the listening is so important, and the reflecting back of what you hear, because a lot of times people say things, but you don't know what's taken in by the person you're trying to talk to. So it's very important, if you say, what I hear you saying, is that what you're saying? Is that what you mean to say? And then they have a chance to correct. They can say,
no, that's not what I meant. That's
no.
and I'm not good at that. I have to admit, I'm not good at that.
well,
That'd be
that's
something I could
homework
be
for
better
you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
The only other thing I'd add to that is a lot of times, and this might be different just in the cases that I've noticed, is they tend to be harder on themselves. Why don't I know this? Why, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid for not knowing this. And it's really just backing them off of that mindset, like, hey, it's a very complex world that you live in, you're thrust into it, and you're doing the best you can. And I think that reaffirmation that they're doing their best effort goes a long way as well.
Absolutely. And I think you can say, women have a tendency to blame themselves for everything. And if things get out of control, or if they don't know something, it must be something that I did, just like the 5-year-old kid. And I'm not saying women are immature, but they do have a tendency to feel like they have to be perfect. And if they're not perfect, then they're bad, and goes from there.
Absolutely.
So one of the things you brought up earlier, and I know you had brought it up on your interview with the Financial Resilience
Institute.
The dirty word out there is budget and budgeting. And I was taught that early on. People do not want to hear that word. But the interesting part about it is that I had financial situation 30 years ago, and how I addressed it was not budgeting, but actually expense tracking. And you alluded to that with the couple that came in a story that you told in the prior episode. And I do the same thing. And say, look, let's figure this out. First, start with, how much do you spend every month? I have no idea. I said, well, actually, there's two ways of finding out. The easy way or the hard way. Which do you prefer? Well, obviously, the easy way. And believe it or not, the easy way is also the most accurate. We just take a look at a 1 year period, look at how much they brought in, which is easy to figure out. Did your bank accounts go up or did they go down? Well, okay, great. Well, that's the starting point. So what'd you spend it on? If I ask people to say, do me a favor, tell me what your monthly expenses are, they'll list them out, and I will tell you, on average, they're 30% short. I say, all right, you said $6,000 a month. I'll bet you that's more like $9,000. And lo and behold, I'm usually right. So what ends up happening is I said, let's now figure out what you're spending it on. At which point, to the point where you said, hey, they were going out to dinner 5 or 6 times a week. All of a sudden they realize they're spending $1,500 a month on going out. Well, guess what? That's a way to dramatically change your budget without going on a budget.
Exactly.
And so they don't feel as offended by it. But I'll tell you, when you learn what you're spending it on, it empowers you to want to make the changes. Fear, a great motivator. If you're fearing that you're running out of money, that's a motivator to do that.
Very, 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 very true. And the other thing is that the data is telling them, not some professional that they think is sitting there in judgment of them.
Right. That's good point.
That's a very
Good point. That's a very good point. Well, believe it or not, we're out of break. Do you have a question? Because we get a good breaking point.
That's hit a good breaking point.
All right, good. We're at a good breaking point. We will be back with you in just a few more minutes. Thank you.
Do you keep up regularly with your investments? Where exactly are your hard-earned dollars going? Are you financially prepared for an emergency?
I'm Mike Meninger, founder of Meninger & Associates Financial Planning. We believe that education and knowledge are powerful, and we want our clients to understand why we are making the recommendations that we make. It's your money, and you deserve to know where it's going, because it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So call us today to discuss your financial concerns. Welcome back to Financial Planning Explained, and I'm continue to be excited to have Dr. Maggie Baker, who's a financial therapist, PhD psychologist, talking about behavioral finance. And we kind of talked over the break what we were talking about last. We were talking a little bit about budgeting, and then you were talking about something creep. What is it?
Yeah, lifestyle creep.
Lifestyle creep.
We're talking about budgeting. So in essence, when you have your budget set, right, in a way that you feel comfortable with, you're meeting your savings toward your goals, everything, now all of a sudden you get a pay raise, you get a boost in your income. How do you avoid something that's considered lifestyle creep? All of a sudden I get a 20% increase in pay, I'm going to spend all that extra money on a vacation. Because that can be a really dangerous thing as someone starts to earn more, they're not putting enough aside. So is that something you work with people on as they stage through the relationship with you?
Yeah, it depends. You know, the whole concept of financial accounting, where the money comes from depends on how you're going to look at it and spend it. So if you get a real windfall from Aunt Mary, you know, that's easy to blow because, you know, it's just one of those things that happens once or twice in a lifetime. If it's your income and you've earned it, usually people have the attitude, well, that's something that I have to really preserve and cherish because that's going to keep, you know, the wheels rolling. But if there's enough excitement, let's say, I think it has to do more with expectation. So if you didn't expect it and all of a sudden you get this huge bonus, it more easily fits into, oh, let's just, you know, have fun with that money. Let's not bother to save it. Yeah. But if you feel that you've worked hard and you need that money to survive, that will, you know, kind of minimize the lifestyle creep. Yeah. So you really have to take it on a case-by-case basis and the background. But generally speaking, the other thing that to consider in there is that as your money grows, probably your responsibility grows. So if you have 5-year-olds and they become teenagers and headed toward college, and you start getting bonuses and everything, you know where that money is going to go.
Yeah, right.
So that tends to put a cap on your creep.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way of putting it. And saying case by case is really important because we'll work with people who are innate savers. And we know that they're very good savers. They actually have very difficult times once they retire to spend their money.
Right.
That's where you almost try and set them up in that where if they get a big raise or a big bonus, spend half of it. I know you want to save it all, but just to get them ready for retirement and spending their money, if you can identify they have more than enough to live on, and not spending is the issue. That's where it's you can save half of it, spend half of it. Then you'll have some people who are spenders, and it's like, hey, let's work on getting this into your budget and getting it invested for your future goals. But
now, do you find if you give that advice that they say, like, can't spend it on myself, but I could, spend it on my kids, or I could spend it on my friends, and what would you say to that?
If it was a new source of information, it all goes back to us about the financial plan.
Mm-hmm.
If they say, hey, I just got this unexpected windfall and I want to give it to a family member or a friend,
Who needs it more than I do?
yeah,
when you
I'm
see
not
that.
here to ever discourage that. But at the same time, if they themselves were lacking on their own funding of their goals, or maybe they had credit card debt that they could really use, I'm not here to tell them how to spend their money. I'm here to help them make well-informed decisions based on the impact of it. So I'd kick that question back to them and say, what's more important to you?
The one thing that I would say to answer your question, to go really with what Kyle's saying, is know your client.
Right.
When you know your client, if you know they're spenders and you see that they got a $20,000 bonus, you know in the back of their mind they're spending $25,000 of it.
Yeah.
Okay? If you can encourage them to at least pay down debt, or at least fund a goal, or talk to them about the different things, because they will spend $25,000 of that $20,000 bonus.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Well, I don't know whether you remember the point that Eloise Duncan made, but she said that 60% the people who do well with resilience and saving, that 60% of them have financial advisors. So that the people who do well with their money are primarily hooked with a financial advisor.
Interesting. I remember that. I remember that.
Yep.
That's really important, because what I've noticed is when I joined that investment club, I was with 10 IT guys and a sculptress, and they were Mennonites, and they were super, super savers and super independent. And they were not going to listen to anybody, and they wanted to just do it their own way. And I was convinced through that experience that they were really limiting themselves and maybe even self-sabotaging, because there's no way that one single person or even a small group of people that aren't in finance have the access to information immediately
Right.
the way you guys do.
Right.
And they couldn't hear that, though.
Well, one thing I tell a lot of clients, right, wrong, or indifferent, is that we have one big advantage over every one of our clients. And that's that we don't have the emotional attachment that could cloud judgment.
Right.
And it's not just that we have the experience and understand all the different things, which we do, but we don't have that emotional impact.
Yeah, but I would also say that you also have emotions, and that you, with your own money, might have more difficulty with what you're trying to do with your own money.
Oh, well, yeah, it's our own emotional impact gets involved in our own, right, of course.
But when you're dealing with your clients, you're clear.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
what I meant by
Try to
that.
put
So,
a bias
Dr.
aside.
Maggie, you brought a bunch of props with you today. You want to show us what you brought?
Sure. I love these. This is money that I love to give out. And if you notice, it has the picture of the book cover on the money, but this is life dollars, in hopes that if the book helps you and you get into better financial shape, that you will enjoy your money in a much more balanced way. So this is just a token. and then on the back it just has my website. And this is what I call a crazy about money meter. And
Here, can I see it?
yeah, it's faces. Smiley face on the top, frowning face on the bottom. And this is to try to help create awareness of your emotion when you're dealing with money. So if you go to the bank and you think, oh boy, I know that I've got, several $100s in my account, and you get the balance and it's, minus something, you're going to look like this. And that's going to just help you be aware that you're being affected by the information that you're getting about money. And if you are going to the bank with $1,000 to deposit, you probably look more like this.
Yeah.
So this is, and that's a bookmark.
Or you find a $20 bill in your pants pocket when
Yes.
you put
Put it there. And this is just my business card, and this is just my business card.
Very nice.
Two different.
Well, that's neat. So there's so many more things we can
Yeah,
talk about.
there's a lot.
I tell you
Got a
what,
list.
I'm afraid to get started. You got a lot on your list. I'm afraid to get started because we're going to take us past the end of this
That's fine.
episode.
Take it to
So
another one.
how do you feel about doing another one?
I would love to. You
Good.
guys are great.
All right, good. Well, in
And
that
I
case,
forgive you for not having a woman on your staff.
you know what?
As a financial
I am
advisor, you got one
trying.
there.
I am trying. I'm serious when I tell you, I am trying. I would love nothing more than to have a woman financial advisor on my staff. And I've come close, but no cigar.
One day.
Well, maybe through my BNI connections, I can at least get you some candidates.
Well, there you go. Always interested. Always
Good.
interested. And it provides a balance. It provides a balance where, as the lead advisor here in the firm, any new client that comes in the door, I'm going to meet. And I generally try to pair them up with one of our advisors who best meets the personality, just it's a good fit.
Yeah.
I don't have the female advisor choice to create the good fit. So
Yeah.
believe me when I tell you, I'm trying.
Okay. Well, I'll try to help you with that.
I would love that. Thank you very much in advance for that. That's a
You're
beautiful
welcome.
thing because I think that we can bring. There was the one. Remember, we had the one gentleman that I knew brought his daughter in to take over his business.
Vaguely.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's a potential one lurking because I keep thinking about just that. I even
Good.
said that to her. I said, we need something like that over here. So anyway, but thank you for re-encouraging and reminding me of our shortcomings here.
Well, you're very welcome. And I did it with a smile.
There you go. That's a great thing. Always with a smile. So I hope everybody is watching is smiling as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed this episode, and there's so many more things that we can talk about. So how do you do that? You have another episode. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you the next time.